Welcome back, everybody. This is Dave Astorina again with Dr. Mary Boardman. Today we're going to talk about how you got into this whole field of sound and energy medicine. What led you there? What's the story that drove that?
Okay. It goes back to the late 80s when I got divorced. And in 89, I met a man, and we were together until 1992. And he had been ill, and we'd had him to several doctors trying to figure out what was wrong. And we were together on Valentine's night, and I got a call from my mother saying that my grandmother had passed away. And my grandmother was living with my mother at that time, so I immediately hopped in a car to go down and help my mother with funeral arrangements and everything. And Donnie was still working at the time up at Cornell.
What did you do with Cornell?
He was in the water treatment plant. And one of the things that I can actually thank my parents for and bless them for was that they really encouraged my brothers and I to develop our psychic abilities. Early on as children, we played with J.B. Ryan's ESP cards and things like that. So my mother would read Edgar Cayce. So living in that other world was not foreign to us. It was actually encouraged. And so I had this heightened intuitive sense since a young child. And when I was down helping my mother, we had the funeral on my birthday, the 17th actually, of February. And I called Donnie at Cornell, and nobody answered. And I just knew that something was wrong. So I called Cornell Safety, and they checked on him, and they found him semi-comatose.
Oh dear.
And before I could get back on the 21st, he had gone into the hospital in a coma. So for 10 weeks, he was in a coma. And he was non-responsive to anything, pain, cold, heat, nothing. About 3 days before he died, Spirit said, now this is 1992, remember, Spirit said, buy a Walkman and play our favorite tape, because one of the things we used to love to do was to listen to music and just talk about wherever the music took us.
Right.
So I did that. I bought a Walkman and some headphones, and I got our favorite tape and went to the hospital, and I put the tape on and put the headphones on him, and he came out of the coma.
Really?
Really.
That's pretty amazing.
So I crawled in bed with him and held him, and we talked of our love and our relationship. And eventually I said, you know, if you can come back and heal from this, it was congestive heart failure. If you can come back and heal from this, wonderful, great. But if not, this is really killing us both. For every day for 10 weeks, going up to the hospital, over to Syracuse, back to the hospital, back to Ithaca.
Right, because you were working a couple other jobs as well.
Yeah, right. I was in Syracuse and Auburn and living in Ithaca. So there was a lot of commuting going on. So eventually we just held each other and talked some more, and he went back underneath into the coma. And I didn't know what would happen, but he died 3 days later. And it was actually the gift of his death that got me propelled onto a serious spiritual path. Because after he died, I had so many questions about this intuitive sense of knowing that there was something wrong.
Right.
And where did that come from? What was that all about? What's this thing called consciousness? Is it in the body, out of the body? What is it? What was there about sound and music in particular that brought him out of the coma?
Right.
That nothing
And brought
else?
him out coherently.
Coherently,
Yeah.
yeah. He was back in time, but he still knew me.
You know, they're doing that right now. There's going to be a movie coming out. I think it's called Alive Inside or something like that.
Oh, cool.
And it's actually about just that, where they're going into nursing homes and putting the music of the time for these people in, you know, Walkman or, you know, an iPod, and putting it on their heads And a lot of these people are coming out of their semi-catatonic state where they don't interact with anybody. And it's pretty amazing. I was watching trailers on YouTube.
Wow.
Pretty amazing stuff. And I said, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Music hits a whole different part of the brain. I took care of my mother from 98 to '01. And she was nonverbal, but if I put a keyboard in front of her, she could still play the old hymns.
Wow.
She couldn't sing or talk, but she could play the old hymns, and she responded to music. So I always had music going for her.
Interesting. So this is what started you on the path that
It's what started me on it.
you've been working on for more than 20 years.
Yeah, a long time, thank God. And the year after that, in '93, I was living in downtown Ithaca, and my last child was going out to the University of New Mexico. And I thought, well, why am I in Ithaca? You know, we'd had horrible storms in '91, '92, snowstorms. And I thought, why am I still in Ithaca? My kids were all grown and gone. And so I was going to go into private practice with some friends of mine in Scottsdale, Arizona. But about 3 weeks before I left, my daughter and I were driving down to Candor, your house, not your house, but here in Candor, to the ice cream store. And I passed this sign that said open house and auction. And Spirit, who's been talking to me since I was about 8, said, follow me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said no.
I want ice cream.
Yeah, I want ice cream. I don't say no anymore. But we went down and we got ice cream, but on the way back it said, now are you going to follow me? And so my daughter and I wound up through the hills to the house, and we were driving down the driveway to this house when Spirit said, this is your life, this is your mission, this is where you're going to be.
Really? And this was on Peter Road?
It was on Peter Road. And I, of course, said, no, it's New York, I don't want to be here. But to make a long story short, 7 days later I owned the house and the land.
Wow.
And I had been downloaded the retreat center, how to build it, the diagram, the architecture, the programs we would be doing, how much to bid for the property and the house, just everything was laid out.
Huh.
And so I came out to the open house, and there were a couple hundred people, and everybody was milling around, and I kept getting these downloads of what to do. And I thought, well, I know there's people with money, and I had none.
Right.
And I came out to the auction, and nobody showed up to bid. There were about 175 people and no bidders, just me. I swear I didn't do anything to any of them. And so we ended up closing for exactly the amount that I'd been told to bid. It was the fair price.
Isn't that interesting?
And so
Isn't that
then I took it to an architect, actually to a builder who took it to an architect in June. The architect had the design finished by July, and we had it built on time, on budget by September.
Wow.
No hang-ups, no problems whatsoever. We were just saying something bigger, yes to something bigger than we were.
Right.
So then my brother calls me from Seattle. And this is where it gets really interesting with the sound work. He's an aerospace engineer, and he was head of the future projects at Boeing in Seattle. And he said, sis, you've had a heck of a 18-month jaunt. You know, Donnie died, and I built the retreat center. He said, come on out and just relax and chill for a while. And I said, okay. So I flew out and saw him, and he said one night, he says, well, sis, I've got this meeting I want to go to. How about coming with me? And I said, sure. What is it? He said, well, a bunch of us engineers get together for an extrasensory perception paranormal psychology club.
Did you expect that?
No. Of all things I expected, about, you know, he's into winemaking. I thought it'd be something around winemaking or wine drinking. And I said, let me get this straight. A bunch of aerospace engineers sit around and talk about their experiences with paranormal psychology. He goes, yeah, I said, I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Sounds like fun,
I've
actually.
got to go. It was great. It was great. And there were about probably 20 or 5 or 30
Uh-huh.
engineers there. And the speaker that night was from the Robert Monroe Institute, which is the premier sound institute in the country, down in Faber, Virginia.
So they were speaking, but not about paranormal stuff. They were speaking
Well,
more
when
about...
you do sound work, you get into the paranormal, out of body, brainwave technology stuff. You absolutely get into the altered state work. Absolutely.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, absolutely. And they answered every question I had about how sound and music got to Donnie when nothing else
Right.
did, why he responded the way he did, what I could do with it. And I said, well, send me some information. And by the time I got home, they had sent me some information. And so I started in '95 to do a couple of years of their programming. And I remember getting out of what's called the Controlled Holistic Environmental Chamber. It's a check unit. You actually do all the programs in there. You sleep in there in your hemisync, which is another story. And I got out and grabbed my head and went down on my knees. And my head was buzzing. It didn't hurt at all. It was just
Right.
buzzing. And Spirit said, your brain has been rewired. And from then on, my channeling and my hands-on healing abilities increased like 1,000-fold, and I wasn't even doing that work at the time. But it was a rewiring through sound
Right.
and learning more about sound and brainwave technologies that it was really brought to my attention that this is your life,
Right.
and this is your mission. And I'm still at Nature's Song, which is now Event Horizons, and that's my mission, is to bring sound, healing, and energy medicine to people who need it, which is all of us.
So let's talk just a little bit about that right now. Let's talk about how you've helped people and maybe a case study or two of folks you've worked with and the kinds of benefits you get from working with sound. I know you do family therapy and you use sound as part of all the different modalities of therapy you're using.
Right.
But I know a couple people. One was actually my mother-in-law who's in constant pain, who you worked with for a couple hours, and she was pain-free for quite a while after that, which was really quite an amazing thing to me. You want to tell everybody about a couple other folks or some other
Well, I had a very
successes?
dear friend that I'm also a minister. For those of you who don't know, I'm a therapist and a minister. I have a Doctor of Ministry degree. And I've gone on 2 missions. It was always my vision since the time I was 12 to go on mission work. And I've done 2 missions down to Costa Rica to help build a Methodist school, a Protestant school for the children down there in a predominantly Catholic country. And the leader, we had 21 of us the first time we went down, and the physician that went with us was a dear friend, and his wife was the nurse, so we had this doctor-nurse team that went with us. And he eventually had cancer of the face and the brain.
Oh dear.
And I worked with him for several years, and one of the things that he had was facial reconstruction due to the cancer.
Right.
And he had something like 31 facial surgeries done. And after his, 29th or 30th facial reconstruction surgery, his wife called me from the hospital and said, they're saying that he's going to be in a coma for 6 days, normally. Is there anything that I could do? And I said, well, yes. As a matter of fact, there is. And this is where the story of Donnie comes back in. My friend had several remarkable experiences on my table with sound. Just remarkable experiences. And so I knew the tones and the tunes that we had used, and I knew he had them on his iPod. So I told her, I said, I know he has his iPod with him, get the earbuds. She couldn't do anything this way, but bring them under his chin and put them on. Excuse me, and play this particular track that I know that he would respond to. And she did. and he came out of the coma, and the doctors couldn't believe it. It was like 4 or 5 days too early to come out of the coma, according to them.
Did they have to put him back under?
No, they didn't. No, but it was such an extensive surgery. I think it was like 14 hours,
Right.
16 hours
Right.
long, that they figured it would take that long for him to come out.
Right.
And yet, using sound, it didn't take that long, and he was fully functional when he came out. So that's the power of sound.
I think it's pretty amazing. I know that, I worked with you and it helped me considerably. And also I had another friend who went to you before she had surgery and then went again as part of rehab. And she's told me that the doctors are surprised at how quickly she was healing. Because she is an older woman, and it was just amazing. So, I think that what you found here is something that's really valuable to a lot of people, and I find it really interesting myself because I'm kind of a sound junkie anyway. I just love nature and sounds, and I've been a field recorder for some time. I would get up really early and record the birds and record peepers at night. And,
Really?
oh yeah,
That's interesting.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
We really are living in this concert. Anything that you see that has a form, us, the porch, the animals, exists first as sound. Pythagoras knew this in 500 BC. He said because atoms vibrate, things vibrate, they have a frequency.
right.
If they have a frequency, they have a tone. Now, a lot of it we can't hear, but that doesn't mean we aren't influenced by it, or that we're not sitting in this wonderful concert.
So talk a little bit more about that. You're saying each form has its own frequency.
Right.
So I'd heard you speak before about the planets having frequencies,
Right.
and everything having its own frequency, that the Earth has a frequency, and that we vibrate at the same frequency of the Earth, and that each organ system in your body has a frequency.
Right.
I find that really interesting. You said there was also NASA research around that.
Yes, there is. Yes. When NASA sent out the Voyager space probes, not just 1 and 2, I think they sent out 9 altogether, but definitely on 1 and 2, they programmed it to send back in radio frequencies, I believe it was, the frequency of every asteroid, moon, planet, blanking.
Piece of space junk.
Piece of space junk, yeah. Actually, it's the solar flare that we're hitting this week. It's like zapping my memory. But anyway, it sent back everything that it met and sent back the frequency of it. And this is Dr. Jeffrey Thompson's work. He worked with NASA to bring those tones down in frequencies down into the range of our hearing. So he has a whole series of CDs out now. You can journey to the moon Io of Jupiter, for instance. It's amazing. And I got the one for the Schumann resonance of Earth. And when I play that at a workshop that I do, I have profound experiences. Everybody in the room, there's something about, it's in our heartbeat, it's in our DNA. And when you hear it as well, it's just a profound experience of awakening, of, oh, it's just like...
Well, that makes sense to me because we used to put alarm clocks and things in puppies' crates because it would mimic the sound of the mother's heartbeat, and the dogs were calmed by it. And so the Earth is like, the Earth is our mother, and that's the heartbeat that calms us.
Yeah.
And which seems to make perfect sense.
I have people who have trouble journeying to some of the other CDs that I have, but never have a problem when I put on the Earth CD.
Interesting. Well, I think that's enough for this video
Okay.
for now.
Wonderful.
Stop back and see us. We'll be posting these every so often, and hopefully you can learn a whole lot more about the work of Dr. Mary Boardman and the value of sound in your life. So Dr. Mary Boardman of Orion Psychotherapy and Energy Medicine.
Yep. Thank
Thanks,
you, Dave.
Mary.
Appreciate it. Thank you.